3, 2. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining The Big Radical. It is me, Aaron Robinson, and we are here for my third podcast, and I am all alone in the studio, all by myself, and this is a little intimidating. I'm going to talk about a lot of stuff today. Actually, I don't know if I am going to talk about a lot of stuff. No, we are going to talk about... See, this is what happens when you put me in a studio all by myself. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I going to do? But today on our third episode, first off, I'm coming up with a name for this podcast. And I have been debating about if I call it something that I was going to call a project I had earlier before, or if I should come up with a new name. So I am debating about calling my podcast Keeping It Radical with The Big Radical, or Aaron Robinson, however I say it. But anyways, that is the first thing on my mind is what am I going to call this podcast? But anyways, I have one idea. So let me know what you think. Do you think the podcast should be called Keeping It Radical with Radical Robinson? Keeping It Radical with Aaron Robinson? Keeping It Radical with Big Radical? Anyways, let me know in the comments below. But you guys, we are here for my third podcast, and I was thinking about topics about what I wanted to talk about, and this was hard because I like to talk lots. I sometimes feel I talk a little bit too much, but there are a lot of topics close to my heart as well as my family's heart that I would like to talk about. So one thing that clearly everyone sees, because I feel like a purse falls out of my mouth every time I talk, but maybe that's just me. But I want to talk about my lifestyle and more so just me as a gay man. I want to talk about my coming out story, which was actually a really good coming out story. I know people have not so good ones or negative ones or not supportive stories. Mine was actually pretty good, but everyone has their own set of challenges that you deal with. And I think the stuff with me, my 30s have been a very big year. I feel like a lot of stuff that happened to me in my past, at that time, I just buried a lot of it. And I am actually in my adult ages and being 30 and over 30. Actually, I'm 33, you guys, but don't tell anybody. I look like I'm 29. It is stuff that I'm actually dealing with now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and just kind of encompass my LGBTQIA2 Spirit Plus story / I just like to say my queer story. And that's basically what it's going to be today for episode 3. I am the Big Radical, and this is Keeping It Radical. So let's go, you guys. So thank you, everyone, again, for joining me today. So just a little recap. We are going to be talking about my coming out story. And I don't really actually feel like it's a very big coming out story, but, everyone has a different one. Everyone sees their story and their experiences differently than other people, and everyone experiences something different. So in me sharing my story, I hope that even just one person that hears my story, maybe it resonates with them, or, maybe it brings up something that maybe someone has someone in their life that's going through the same thing. But anyways, if I can just touch one person, and not like naughty touch, but like good touch, one person from my story, that's kind of what I want to do. So I came out, oh God, this is actually something a lot of people ask me, Aaron, did you always know? And to be very honest with you, I feel like I always knew, but I never knew what the label was to it. Or I didn't know what the label was, or I didn't know what I was feeling. I knew that there was something different, but it goes all the way back to like my little church days. So I was raised in very much, I feel like, the Baptist church, a very religious, believing family. And it was a very supportive family, but still like any type of religious, faithful family, there is that stigma through generations, which back in like the Greek days, I feel like everyone was gay. But now it's one of those where it was a generational thing. And I felt like I always knew. But I remember my very first crush on a guy was one of the guys from church who, when you're super young and your parents don't want you to sit during the service, they send you upstairs to like the playpen and all the kids have fun. Well, anyways, you'd be supervised. And I remember that there was this one guy, and I'm not going to say his name, but he was a son of one of the attendees. And I think I was 7, 8, somewhere around there. Like, and it wasn't an attraction in a sexual way, but it was, I just saw him. And now I'm like, oh my God, Aaron, you're totally into older men. You saw this from like the age of 7, whatever. But that was kind of like the first time I noticed that I looked at somebody differently, in a different way than how I was supposed to look at my girlfriends. And that's when I kind of knew. Then you go throughout school and you go throughout the church and whatnot, and you just bury things. I don't feel at any point that it was ever pushed on me to bury it. It was just one of those things where, like, you're taught that that's not right, or that that is not appropriate, or whatnot, and you just kind of bury it. And so that was really, honestly, what I did. I had a girlfriend, and she was like my first serious girlfriend. And, you know, this story actually is very emotional to me, because this is actually something that when I was younger, I feel like I buried everything I went through with her to a point where I was like, Aaron, you're fine. Because that was kind of the dynamic, was in my life, Aaron, you fall, you get back up, you try it again, you don't complain, you just do it. And that was very much how I was raised, was, Aaron, you just need to get the job done. However you get that job done, you get it done. If it doesn't work right the first time, you do it again. And I feel like that is something that has very much pushed me in my today life and in society and with my friends. But that was very much how I was raised. And I remember when I first met my girlfriend, it was all kumbaya and it was wonderful. I had a girlfriend. It took me years to realize that I was with her because she was my beard. I couldn't grow a beard at the time, but she was my beard. And, you know, I knew, I would say throughout at least half of that relationship, I knew that I didn't see her in that type of way. I didn't see her in a sexual way or anything. It grew more of like a friendship, but to be very honest with you, it grew almost as like an abusive friendship, a very emotionally abusive as well as physically abusive. And it just wasn't on her side, it was also on my side, because you have to remember, like, I was hiding something too. I was hiding my authentic self, my true self, and I would have done anything for that not to come to light, or not come to light before I even knew like what the hell I was going through, or what I wanted, or what I liked. Because at that age, you don't know what you want or what you like. Or for me anyways, I feel like I didn't know. I was on this little journey. But her and I, like, we stuck together, and it was not the best relationship in the world. There was a lot of cutting down and whatnot. And in my older years, when I hit 30, you know, I think I buried it so much that in my 30s, it started to come up. And one thing I have noticed, and I have not shared this really with a whole lot of people or publicly, so, oh, you guys, you make me so nervous, but I'm going to tell you, but I respond to women a lot differently than I respond to men. And I think I am a very an emotional person. I feel like I can jump the gun, but through my relationship and through like burying it and not dealing with past traumas and stuff, I deal with women a lot differently than I deal with men. If I get into like an altercation with a woman, I see red. And it's not red in a violent way. It's just, I just see red. There's no reasoning with me. There is just nothing. I see red, and I just absolutely have to stop that conversation. I have to walk away, and I have to come back when I'm cooler. With a guy, I feel like I can have somewhat of a rough conversation with a guy, and you kind of argue with guys. You say what you say, and then you come back an hour later and you resolve it. With me and women, I find it is a lot harder to resolve issues or conflicts because of what I went through in the past with manipulation and bullying and that kind of stuff, with just normal girlfriends as well as my girlfriend. Now, again, not everyone's perfect, and I'm not sitting here pointing the finger. It takes two to tango, and I think that is one thing that a lot of people forget. It takes two to tango. Yes, someone dances a little bit harder than the other, but it does take two to tango. And in my end, I wasn't honest with her. And I think she knew that, but I don't think she was ever willing to admit it to herself. And she would always, there was actually a few times where I tried breaking up with her. And I remember, and it was almost like there's things like this. How did you not know? But like, I'm the biggest Beyonce freak. And actually, before we started this podcast, I had some girls in my office and I just started singing the new Beyonce Renaissance album to them because I absolutely love it. I am a Beyonce freak. Well, my girlfriend at the time bought me my first set of Beyonce concert tickets. and she took me to Beyonce. And if she didn't know at that time that Aaron was just a little queer, I don't know what else was going to tell her. But anyways, so there's parts of me that I think she knew, but I don't think she wanted to admit it. And I think her and I had been together because, you know, when you're together with somebody for a while, even in like marriages or just any type of relationship, the longer you're with each other, the harder it is to separate from each other. And the harder it is to go your separate ways, and you build a life with each other where you bring in your parents, your family, your friends. That ends up going the way of the dodo bird when you end up separating with somebody. And she would always use that against me. Oh, you know, look at what you're going to do to our family. And that was something that kept me in for a very long time because I was scared. I didn't want to have that divide. And I didn't want her to feel like that. But at the same time, it was just one of those. So anyways, I remember her and I had an argument. And, you know, she was working at a spa downtown. And, you know, when you're young and you're 19, well, I don't think, hopefully the 19-year-olds don't do this anymore because it wasn't the best decision on my part financially. But like when you're 19, you get a paycheck and you go to the ball and you spend the whole entire paycheck on everything but what you actually had to spend it on, like your cell phone bills and your car payments and everything. You buy it on clothes. And I remember one day, her and I went shopping and like, she picked out a bunch of clothes for me. Totally fine. It was what happened. I went to go pick her up from work that one day. And she looked at me and I had like my new clothes on and maybe I was a little flamboyant that day. I don't know. And really, to be honest with you, it was so long ago, I don't even remember. But she looked at me and she said, "Hey, next time you pick me up, please don't look like such a fag." And you know, just her saying it, it was like a switch. And I took it in and I remember I didn't even know how to respond. But she said it to me, and I just sat there, and I was like, Erin, like, she's even saying it now. Now she's saying it to your face. Before it was behind your back, but she's saying it to your face. Just come out. And, you know, I was silent for about a week. Me and her didn't really talk, and it was Remembrance Day of 2007. I will remember it like no tomorrow. But she called me up, and we had an argument on the telephone, and I was just like, you know what? This is not working. I don't want to go down this road again. And I think, like, I'm explaining it calmly now, but it was not calmly. It was us screaming at each other. And I just came out and I was like, you know what? I'm gay. We cannot be together anymore. And that was kind of the hard Band-Aid that I had to rip off of the situation. And that was kind of where that relationship ended. And it was hard for both of us. And, like, you know, some shit went down in between. I think I coming out, and again, still at that time, I wasn't sure what was going on. Was I bi? Was I straight? Was I gay? Did I just want to experiment? And I think these are all questions that everyone has when you come out. Like, what do I like when you don't know what you like or what you want? And so anyways, we went back and forth, and it didn't get any better. And that was actually when I met my husband, Scott, at that time. You know, he was that saving grace that I was looking for. He accepted me no matter what. He didn't care how gay I was or anything. He just loved me unconditionally. And it was such a stark contrast from the relationship I had to the relationship that I'm having. And so anyways, that was kind of my coming out story to my girlfriend. That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was honestly coming out to my parents. And, you know, my mom was easy. Like, my mom grew up in the 70s. She was a hippie. She went to all the parties. She had all the gay friends. She did the discos. To her, I don't think it was ever an issue. With my dad, I don't want to say it was an issue, but it wasn't something my dad had ever experienced in his friend group or in his family. And very much being very traditional and very conservative, that was my dad's thoughts on it. And I remember when I came out, I told my mom, okay, so note to self, people, when you come out to your parents, please, because sometimes parents take it a little differently, Please do not be like me, and do not tell your mom while she's driving 120 down a highway, white-knuckling it, scared of semis, and you're like, oh, Mom, I just thought I would tell you, I think I'm gay. That's not the best time to tell your mom. Definitely wish she has a lot of questions, but for me that's kind of when me and my mom would have like good sentimental talks. But anyways, that was how I told my mom, and my mom was very open about it, and she was very supportive. And that was then when I had to tell Dad. And I told Dad, and his response wasn't the response I was looking for. But to be honest with you, any response that he would have given me would not have been the response I was looking for. Hindsight is always 20/20. I wanted my dad to basically be like, oh my God, Aaron, I don't care. I love you no matter what. You can be gay, straight, whatever. I love you. That's the response I wanted. That wasn't necessarily the response I got. It wasn't a negative response, but it was more of a response coming from his end being like, I don't understand. I don't understand how you can have a girlfriend for so long and then do this or be this. I don't understand. I've never had any same-sex friends. I don't understand how a gay dynamic relationship works. For my dad, it was more of a not understanding the dynamic. And because he didn't understand it, how could he have an opinion on it? And I think when I was younger, I took that as a very negative thing, as being like, oh, my dad doesn't accept me. And it took me some years to realize that it wasn't that Dad didn't accept me, he just didn't understand. And I think today when I talk with young people, or even like people my age or older that come out, a lot of that understanding or putting yourself in other people's shoes, because we always want people to be in our shoes, but that empathy for the other party to be like, okay, they don't get it. If they don't get it, they can't give you the response that you want. It took me some time to figure that out. And the more me and Scott got serious and the more our relationship evolved, it was the more my dad's outlook on it evolved. The more, okay, or holy shit, okay, they have a better relationship than most of our straight couples, friends that we have. Or, their dynamic's really no different. It's just they are two men. Or they're the same sex. And so now today, my dad is absolutely loving of it, accepting, but it was one of those where it was a learning curve. I didn't think it was a learning curve. I very much went into it very selfishly, being like, you need to understand, Dad. You need to understand. Everyone needs to understand I'm gay. You just have to love it. But it took me time to really be like, you know what, Aaron, put yourself in their shoes. Maybe they just don't get it. Maybe they've never had anyone in their life go through something or come out. They just don't understand. So let's help them understand. And in me helping them understand was basically me having a healthy relationship with my husband, communicating properly, building a life with each other, having respect for each other, having love for each other. That was all I had to do. So now my relationship with my parents is absolutely great, and it's always been great, but it is 100% accepting. And that was kind of my coming out story. The mental health part of it was something that it took me about 12 years to really realize that I hadn't dealt with some things of my coming out story, of past experiences and trauma. And you know what? It actually took me going to therapy and starting to go to therapy this year. And my therapist looking at me and said, Aaron, trauma happens in so many different ways. Maybe you weren't physically hurt or whatnot, but trauma is different to every single person. And I had neglected that for such a long time. And I had also put myself in that box of, Aaron, you're strong, you can deal with it. Stop being a sissy, stop being a wimp, just do it. And it was something that I had to really take a step back, look at my mental health aside from my physical health, and say, there's some things we need to work on. And there's some things that I don't think I've ever actually have brought up that I feel are starting to come up now. And the biggest thing that I noticed was my relationship with women. I connect with women very well, but it's that if I have a negative experience or if it is a conflict resolution, I find sometimes that is challenging for me, and those are things that I'm working on. But it took me going to therapy to really kind of realize that, Aaron, you're not dealing with shit. And you need to start dealing with it. And it was coming out in a lot of different ways. It was coming out in my relationship. Me and my husband were not seeing eye to eye on a few things. And what couple actually sees eye to eye on everything? That's something that I in the comments, tell me, but I don't think couples see eye to eye on everything. But for so long, I put myself in that box of couples see eye to eye on everything. And that very much, in that way, I neglected my mental health and things that I wanted. Rather than what's good for the relationship, what's good for Aaron, and like what is going to push Aaron forward. And so that was really where the mental health really came in. And you know, at the beginning of this year, I kind of felt like I hit a wall oh my God, I can't say this word. Creatively? Anyways, little radicals, you get the hint. But I just hit this wall. And where I felt like I hit this wall was I was on teams, I was solo, back on teams, solo. And it takes a lot of creativity to revamp yourself. And revamp people and to reinvent basically yourself, your image, your brand, and all that. And I felt like I was doing it constantly so much, I just got burnt out. And that was at the beginning of this year. And that's where I really was like, Aaron, something's not right. You're not excited about some things, things that you would be excited about. And I was struggling with relationships with other people. I was struggling also coming out of COVID and being isolated for so long. And yes, like I worked, but there was still that element of isolation was I only left the house to work. I didn't really leave the house to socialize as a human. I left the house to only do business, to only go and make money, to only go and sell a house and do this. And coming out of that and now wanting to find a new normal rather than going back to the regular normal, which got me in this exact position that I am in, I wanted a new one. And I started going to therapy, and it was hard. It's always been one of those things where I'm like, Aaron, no, you're fine. But I talked with one of my really good friends, and I'm not going to say their name, but they made a comment to me, and it was like looking in a mirror. And it was like, I feel like I just need to go back and talk to my therapist and just figure out some tools. I need some tools. And in hearing that from one of my friends that I thought I would never hear it from, it was like a light bulb went off. And I was like, oh my God, if they can go talk to somebody, why can't I go talk to somebody? And I love it. Actually, my therapist right now, I believe he's in South America because he's from Brazil. And I really need another session. Actually, I messaged him the other day. I was like, when are you back? I feel like I need another session, because it's turned into one of those where I look forward to it, and it allows me to vent about things, and even like talk about my husband, just not negative things, but it allows me to vent. But at the same time, it gives me a different perspective that friends and family cannot give me, that other couples can't give me. And it's probably one of my highlights of 2022 is actually therapy. However, it started negatively, but it is such a positive thing in my life. It is something that I look forward to. If I could afford to do it every single week, Aaron would do it every single week. But Aaron can only now, because I did it for so long, it only happens once a month, and I'm not paying all that prices for every single week anymore. But therapy really changed my life. But it was going to therapy. It really kind of honed in that, Aaron, you're not dealing with things, and you haven't dealt with some things for a long time, and it is at that point where you can no longer bottle it in anymore. So therapy is good. Coming out and being authentic with yourself is good. And just remember, Beyonce said it best. I think it was Beyonce. It's in one of the new Beyonce songs. But actually, it's her song, Church Girls. It's nobody can judge me but me. And I think that is the biggest thing, is that when you get past that, and it's hard, it's so hard. Look at me. I kind of slide away from social media and everything because I was not ready for people to hear my story of what I was going through, and I didn't want the feedback. It's hard. But once you do it, it is one of those where you will not regret it, and it makes you stronger. So that is my episode today. I was supposed to do a Q&A, but I don't really have a Q&A to do. I just thought I would talk about my little coming out. So please, everyone, actually, this was really fun talking to myself in a recording studio by myself. I might have to do this more often. But if you want to hear more, episode 4 is going to be recorded soon. This is episode 3, and you guys, I am very excited to share my life with you. I'm very excited to start getting these podcasts out so that you can start hearing them. And give me your feedback, because I want to make them as great as possible. But you guys, I love you, all my little radicals. This is Aaron Radical Robinson, out one more time. Peace.